Hello, everyone, and welcome to our third quarter event, a live Q&A session with the amazing Dr. Mary Poffenroth. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ariel Bitoni, and I am a co-founder of CWIM, and we are thrilled to have you all here with us today. I'd like to start off first by extending a special thank you to our sponsors, Yield Street, Gelser Investment Management, Schroders, and Wendell Rhodes Consulting, and our hosts today, CFA Society Chile, for their collaboration and support in making this event possible. We could not do it without you all. Before we begin, I just have a couple of quick housekeeping notes. Those of you I know are familiar with Zoom. If you haven't already, please open your chat box up. And we welcome you to submit questions and comments, during the session. Say hi to each other, see who else has joined in the meeting. So we're going to save towards the end of the conversation some time for a Q&A where you can submit your questions to ask Mary, or if you'd like to come off mute and ask your question directly, we can do that as well. It is my pleasure to introduce Fabiola Berli, who will share a few welcome remarks with us on behalf of CFA Society Chile.
Thank you, Ariel, and good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of CFA Society Chile, it is a true pleasure to welcome you to today's event, co-host with Collaborative WIM. We are honored to support this inspiring conversation with Dr. Mary Poffenroth, a renowned biopsychologist, fear and courage researcher, and author of Brave New You, Strategies, Tools, and Neurohacks to Live More Courageously Every Day. Dr. Poffenroth's work helps us understand how fear and anxiety shape our lives, and more importantly, how we overcome them. In today's live Q&A, she will share practical tools and neurohack to help us manage everyday stress and reclaim a greater sense of purpose, peace, and power. Whether in the boardroom, during transitions, or in our daily lives, her insights offer a path toward courageous living. At CFA Society Chile, we are committed to promoting the highest standards of ethics, education, and professional excellence in the investment industry. But we also believe in the power of education and inclusion, also diversity. So our Women's Committee, we actively support gender parity in finance and encourage more women to pursue the CFA designation and leadership roles in our field. We would also like to take a moment to thank our sponsors, whose continued support make it possible for us to carry out our mission and host events like this one. Your partnership is invaluable in helping us build a stronger, more inclusive financial community. We are proud to be part of this meaningful event and hope it inspires you to embrace brave choices in your own journey. Thank you for joining us and enjoy the session. Thank you, Ariel.
Thank you, Fabiola. Wonderful. Well, I would love for Mary to join me on screen. For those of you who joined us early on in our journey of Collaborative WIM, you may recognize Mary. This is her second time joining us. And so we are super excited to dive into the themes today of your books and of your book and hear your insights.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me back. It's going to be a really good session, and everyone that is joining live, welcome. And if you're watching the replay, then you will also have a space here. And I hope that at the end of our time together, you're able to find some good tools to have in your back pocket to navigate all the things, really.
I'm sure they will. Great. Well, I'd love to just start out by just talking a little bit about your personal story and, kind of we'll take it from there and get into the themes of your book. I'd like to kick off by talking a little bit about your journey, where you started off at NASA and found yourself in the area of fearology, and how did that shape the work that you do today, through that transition starting off at NASA?
Yeah, so NASA was definitely a dream job. It was my first big girl science job. And, I went into it, I was very young. I was still in undergrad at the time. And of course, I saw all of the scientists around me as brilliant people that I would never be. I come from a not illustrious line in terms of my family. Out of 5 kids, the only one to graduate high school, the only one in my entire family to go to college. So even just going to college was something weird. It othered me in my family. And going to NASA, even more so, because you're surrounded with these brilliant people doing like just incredible things that we didn't even know were possible, a decade, 2 decades before. And as I was kind of navigating this new treacherous waters, I never really thought that I had access to tools. And looking back, why I wrote the book was because I wanted to write it for that person, that version of Mary that was at NASA, dealing with imposter syndrome. But this was the late 90s, so we really didn't even have the term imposter syndrome. We just didn't have language around it. We didn't talk about these types of things. I mean, I didn't with my friends. There wasn't classes about this at university. There wasn't, internet really to be able to access these communities. And I really wish that I had the neurohacks that I have in my book when I was that age. And, I worked on STS 107, Spaceship Columbia, and we worked, one of the projects that we did was looking at how we could do different, payload experiments. And, my tenure, stopped around, the year 3 or so at NASA and deciding, okay, what do I want to do with my life? And for me, growing up in a household that big, darker emotions weren't allowed, only the happy rainbow ones were, I didn't really know how to navigate my own human experience. And so, being a scientist, I went into the science to try and figure out how I could just be more human, how I could experience the entire rainbow of human emotions.
I love how you use color in your explanations and talk. It makes it
Yes.
so much easier to follow and understand. Um, so on that note, you often have shared some adventurous and sometimes some scary stories. Um, could you share how those moments changed how you personally view fear?
Yeah, well, in the book, I include a lot of those stories because I want you to be entertained and learn
I
from
was.
my misfortunes and my questionable decision making. And hopefully it'll be a couple of good laughs. But I think for me, one of the teachings that I try to convey to people is that being courageous is not something that you're born with. It's not something inherent. It's a practice. And the more you practice, the bigger, bolder, braver decisions you can make in your life. That's going to come with doing the small things at a lower risk every single day. And sometimes when we have a low risk thing, it actually turns out to be a really high risk thing. Definitely a couple of stories in the book about that. And when we're thinking about when we need to show up with the maximum amount of bravery, whether that is getting on stage to deliver a keynote, whether that's asking for a raise or going into, a high stakes negotiation. Those are going to be big things where we definitely feel that sensation of being afraid. And then we know that we have to have that courage to walk in and do our best. But if we only practice in those really high risk situations or high value situations, then we're not really bringing everything we can to the table. A lot of times I will, liken the process as working out, going to bar class, going to, if we work out our bodies consistently as a practice, then we're able to get stronger. And if we need to, let's say, run from a bear because you don't want to give it your pizza, that story is in the book, then you are able to have those muscles ready to go when you really need them. And the same goes for courage, to have those muscles ready to engage and to bring you through those really tough times.
Yeah, that makes sense. You mentioned a little bit earlier about your upbringing and family, and in your book, you talk about being raised by a very fearful mom. Um, if you could share, how did that influence how you interpreted fear and how that affected you as you grew up?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that there's no one in this call that didn't, good or bad, have their adult life influenced about, like from their childhood. That's just how it is. And for me, and again, this is kind of a retrospective. I didn't really understand it at the time, as many children don't. It's when you get to adulthood and you start to dig under the hood, you start to see these patterns. But my mom was very fearful of everything. Like you're going to leave the house, you're going to get sick, or you're going to get hit by a car. No one in my family, including my mother, ever had a passport. So they never had the privilege of leaving the United States and being able to experience other cultures. And that definitely bled into how I was raised. And also for me, It was, I had to be perfect. I had to always be happy and smiling. I had to manage her emotions, meaning that it was my job to make sure that she was always happy, not the other way around. And so when I became an adult and started to dig deeper into just how humans understand and express their emotions, looking back, I was absolutely the people pleasing mask kind of person, right? I just would bottle stuff, do whatever you need to do to only show a happy facade. And being afraid is a really big emotion and an emotion that many people don't know how to deal with in themselves, let alone other people. And so I would get in trouble. Like I did something wrong. And so I equated having these, anger or sadness or being afraid, those emotions as being something bad, right? When they're not. They're just being, human. They're a part of our human experience. And a big piece of my work is trying to destigmatize fear. Fear is a dirty F word for a lot of people. They won't even say the word fear because we've been told that the best way to navigate the human existence is just to pretend like you're never like under the influence of fear, that you're fearless, right? Which is pretty much biologically impossible. There's like, very rare occasions where it's, possible. We'd have severe damage to your amygdala. But for the most part, every single person on this call and that we see in our daily life that are in our families and around the world, they're all going to have everyday fear. And some of it's going to be small, some of it's going to be large, but it is just part of the normal human experience. And when we say to other people, instead of giving you a tool, you just need to be fearless, just suck it up, right? That isn't getting anyone closer to being braver or being more courageous. In fact, it just makes people be like, more ashamed of who they are and what they're feeling. And when we're ashamed, we, pull into ourselves. We don't share. We don't bring our authentic person to the table. And so if we start to normalize that fear is just part of being human, then we can start to have deeper conversations like the one we're having today.
I love it. Well, let's move into talking about your book. And
Yeah.
I don't know if someone has shared, but we will share. There is a link, hellobravenewYou.com, that you all can check out. So let's just kick it off with the big question of what inspired Brave New You. And I know there's a lot of takeaways, but if there is kind of a big main takeaway that you'd like to share, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah. So um, it's good to kind of preface that I am a academic, so I don't see patients. I don't work in the clinical side, and that seems like a really nuanced kind of thing to most people. But as a biopsychologist, I'm in the research. I don't see patients, and I think that's important because I wrote this book for everyone. Not that it won't be helpful for somebody dealing with, let's say, clinical anxiety, but this is a book for anyone that has ever felt fear in their entire life, right? Which
All
is
of us.
pretty much everybody, right? And the thing that really frustrated me is that, especially when it comes to fear, courage, bravery, these things were kind of, especially just fear, focused in psychology around what was wrong with the human brain. That in a clinical setting, something has gone wrong and I need to fix you, right? Where my work is about how do we just optimize our human experience? How do we work better with the equipment that we were already given? How do we understand how our brain and our body works so that we can just better navigate through our day and we can get through those periods of unease and get to the good stuff? So for me, I wrote the book because I would have loved to have this toolkit that is steeped in science when I was first kind of discovering how to navigate, let's say, imposter syndrome, right? Or navigate trying to push myself beyond the place that society told me I was allowed to be, the place that my family told me that I was allowed to be. And all of those things are really scary when you're the only woman in the room, when you are doing something that others you from your friend group or the family group that you were born into. And to have just some of these tools, like the some we're going to go through today of the neurohacks as well as the RAIN method, it would have been a game changer,
Mhm.
total game changer. But instead, like most people, I got the amazing, wonderful advice of just be fearless. Great, thanks. Looks good on a mug, doesn't really help. Like when you're actually going into those scary, risky situations. And I wrote it. I wrote it for that person that I used to be, and I wrote it for people that want to use science in a way that is going to directly benefit their life and something that's immediate. One thing that also was very frustrating for me is a lot of self-development books are invigorating. You read them and you're like, oh man, I'm so jazzed. Like I feel really, ready to change the world. But then you kind of fall flat because there's not a framework. There's not steps to get you, you're energized about their story, but then that's it. Right. You don't get like extra piece to get where you want to go. And I wanted this to be something that could be entertaining, but also something that's going to be valuable that you can continue to come back to as you build your kind of, courage toolkit.
Yeah, no, exactly. So let's dig in a little bit. And I just want to start with a quick question. In the book,
Sure.
you talk about the difference between factual and fictional fear. Can you explain what the difference is and why it's important to know?
Yeah, definitely. And as we get into some of the tools, I want everyone to know that if they go to hellobravenewYou.com, you can get downloads and tutorial videos, no sign in, no sign up, of the neurohacks we're going to be talking about today, including the RAIN method. And this question starts off the RAIN method. So if you miss anything or you want the downloadables for your phone or have handy on your desktop, just go to hellobravenewYou.com and they are there for you. So when we look at all of the things that humans are afraid of, they can really generally be put into one of two buckets, either fictional or factual fear. And in the literature, so if you look in the primary literature, psychology researchers would refer to this as clean and dirty fear. But I felt that that language is really problematic. So I renamed it, again, I want this to be accessible and enjoyable for everyone to experience and learn. And I think that it's better shaped of fictional and factual fear. So we'll start with factual fear, which is going to be something that everyone in the vicinity shares in a particular moment and that we all either need to react to or we don't need to react to. So one example would be you're in a restaurant, it's a busy Friday night, and someone drops like 5 plates that explode all over the floor. Everyone in that restaurant is going to stop. They're going to turn because there's a really big, loud noise. Our brain is going to decide, do I need to do something about this? We recognize, oh, server just dropped some plates. I don't need to worry about it. I'm going to go back to my conversation. But in that moment, we all reacted because it was a loud, unusual sound that we need to make sure, okay, is this actually dangerous or is it benign? And then once we make that decision, we shared that and then we can just go back to our meal. So unless you were that server that dropped all those plates, no one else is going to remember that. We're just going to keep on with our meal. We're not going to wake up at 3 a.m. wondering about that server that broke the plates and how they're doing and you should have said something better. Or, we're not going to ruminate on something like that. And fictional fear is going to be the fear that we have the most impact on because it is also going to be the most insidious. So fictional fear can have a kind of, granule of truth to it, just like any good story. But fictional fears are the ones that we play out in our head, either from the past or we're worrying about the future. These are going to be the ones that wake us up at 3 a.m., that we are going to constantly chew on and think about and ruminate. And those are the ones that are really going to negatively impact our ability to be happy and healthy right now, as well as in the future.
Got it. Okay, I've got lots of those. As you're talking,
Don't
my
we
brain's
all,
going
right?
through, oh, well, I did wake up last night.
And 3 o'clock, right? 3 o'clock just seems to be the
I don't
magic
like to look at
hour.
the clock. I
Yeah.
try not to because then it's more
Just
upsetting.
don't. Yep. Yep. And the great thing about having conversations like this is that we can all come together and hear the stories of other people that are struggling with the same things, and then we feel less alone. And when you feel like you're part of a community, when you feel less alone, that takes some of that bite, that strength out of our fears. Just that simple thing of knowing that other people are experiencing the same thing you are. And that's why telling people just to be fearless is so harmful because then no one is talking about it because then I think everyone else has got their stuff together. And you think that everyone is perfect and got their stuff together. So we all just suffer in silence and nothing changes.
Yes, that is something we are definitely working on changing. So we are aligned in that mission. Okay, so let's talk about, you mentioned the RAIN method. So
Yeah.
would love for you to walk us through RAIN method, and we can just use an example, real life stress scenario. You did bring up imposter syndrome a couple of times, and that is a topic that we've also covered with one of the CWIM events. So we'd love to hear a little bit more about that, how it's been a challenge for you personally, and just any advice that you have that you can share with our audience today.
Yeah, so we will pop into the RAIN method, this little kind of like little rack card. Now, when I do keynotes or corporate workshops, people get the physical stuff because I love physical stuff, including like cards. I love card decks. So these are also in the book, but something that is easy to use when I'm doing, like an event. But you can get a digital copy if you go to that hello, I should say in a British accent, hello, bravenewU.com. And I hope there's not like British people on the call. They're like, that's not a British accent. You do the worst accents. And you would be correct. I'm terrible at accents. So, all right. So RAIN method, the first step for R is going to be recognize. So everyone has a different physical tell that is going to tip you off that you're starting to get into a fear arousal. For our fear arousal is going to be kind of on a spectrum. Sometimes it can be really strong, sometimes it can be mild, and everything in between. Now, knowing what your physical tells are can help to guide you when you're kind of getting into like a mild or, mid type of fear response. If you are experiencing a really extreme fear response, you do not need, you don't need to have a physical tell. You're like, I know what's happening. For me, it's going to be like a shoulder scruncher. So like if I'm have my shoulders up around my ears, or I'm like a jaw tightener, like if I'm kind of grinding my teeth and I have, or at the end of the day, we're like, oh man, my TMJ, what's happening? Then you know something was going on. And everyone has a little bit different. So knowing what your tells are, some people have upset digestive issues. Some people can get clammy hands, racing heart, many, many different ways that your body is physically trying to tip you off that you are entering into a fear arousal state. The next one's going to be a sign. Now, on this, it's really small. So I suggest people download the fear wheel from the hellobravenewU.com and just have it on your phone as one of your favorites in your saved photos. And it's important to note these 4 stages. If you start to feel better by like, completing stage 2, you can stop. You don't need to do the whole thing, but you want to continue on the, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 until you feel better, right? But step 2 is there's a lot of power in pigeonholing here. Humans love to categorize. Humans love to put things in boxes, and that makes us feel safe in a chaotic world, right? So this act of pigeonholing, you'll see, can derail that fear response just in and of itself. So on the fear wheel, you want to assign a word to the sensation that you are experiencing at that time, and it can only be one. So you don't want more than one because then you're taking that power away from pigeonholing. By having one exact word from the fear wheel, it's just me adjectives for fear, that can help you kind of focus in on something specific because many times these big emotions feel really messy and nebulous and lofty. It's hard to grab onto them, but if we can laser focus into just one word, that can help knock us out of that fear arousal state. So definitely, fear wheel and be able to blow it up nice and big so that you can read it. And then the third step, if you're still not feeling better and more in control and more empowered to move forward, would be to identify. So coming back to this idea of if we took all of the fears that we as humans feel and we tried to give a very rough categorization. In this process, you recognize that something's going on, right? Many times we just talk about stress, where most stress is going to be actually a fear arousal response. But we use the word stress as kind of a big bucket to put everything in. And if we've recognized something's happening in our body, we're scrunching our shoulders or tightening our jaw, we've assigned a single word to the thing that we're feeling in that moment. The third is going to be to take that feeling and decide, all right, can I say that it is in the bucket of not feeling like you're enough, fear of not being enough, or is it in more of a kind of like fear of losing control? Because when we take these big fictional fears, they generally can belong into one or two buckets. I will give the caveat that sometimes, we're complex organisms, and sometimes that big feeling will kind of be a little bit both. But the power, again, in this step is just to pick one, right? You want to bring a sense of control and focus to the sensations that you're feeling. So just choosing which one fits the best. Because again, it doesn't need to be perfect, right? It's the process is the point. It doesn't need to be perfect, but just choosing one of, all right, I feel this. Is it fear of not enough, which imposter syndrome would fit into that? Or is it fear of losing control? And some other fears that we're all kind of dealing with, like fear of losing control could be something like you're worried about your finances, right? Because having access to money allows you to have control over your day, control over whether or not you can get health care for you and your family, where you can live, all these things. And so if you're worried about money, then it also can be put into that bucket of fear of losing control. And then the fourth step is going to be navigate. On the card, there is box breathing. Box breathing is going to be a method used by the Navy SEALs. You'll notice that in my work, I try to also pull from different kind of mechanisms that are rooted in evidence to be able to provide as many neurohacks as possible. And box breathing is, there's many, many different types of breathwork things, but I like to keep all of my tools as simple as possible, because if it's not simple when you're not under stress, you're not going to use it when you are under stress. Like if it's convoluted or has like way too many steps, you're not going to use it. You're not going to use it. So that one's on there, but I do want to show a couple of other ones that you can pop out of that fourth step and use any of the neurohacks. They're going to be on the cards as well. So this is one of my favorites that we can use, because doing the box breathing always sounds kind of weird when you're on mic. Because you're trying to talk and you're like, okay, one, two, three, four. I mean, it's better when I do it in a workshop, right? Instead of like on a Zoom call where I'm breathing all weird for you. And so we're gonna do a different one. This is one of my favorites. It's called Pinch the Valley, and you are going to now. I'm right hand dominant, so I start with my right to my left. Doesn't matter which way you start, but on my left, I'm going to make an L, and I'm going to take my right hand, my thumb and forefinger, and kind of like massage, not on the webbing part, but where these thumb and forefinger come together in a V or a valley, in that kind of meaty part. And I'm just going to massage in a circle. And what you're doing is you are activating the vagus nerve, the longest cranial nerve in the body, and you are physically telling your amygdala, which is going to be the fear center in our brain, that everything's fine, we're okay. And even just doing this right now, and I invite everyone on the call to give it a shot, I instantly feel the difference of being able to just, and something simple, no one really knows you're doing it. You could do this, it's just like you're holding your hands. You could do this under the table at a meeting, while you're driving, and you are actively starting to calm that fear response with something that is as simple as just massaging in between the thumb and forefinger. And switch to the other side. You don't need to go super deep and give yourself a bruise, but just a little is enough. And that is going to help to bring that sense of calm back so that you can continue and move forward.
Quick question.
That could be, yeah.
You said your dominant hand. Does it matter which side you start with, or you just do both sides and they both?
Yeah.
Activate?
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter which side. Really, it's the activation of the vagus nerve that's important. For me, it just feels natural to start with my right hand as the pincer and go to my left, and then I'll switch it. But it doesn't matter either way. Really, the most important part is that you are massaging into the meaty bit, because that's when you're going to hit the nerves. But if you only go to where it's the webbing, then it's not going to do anything. And all of my neuro hacks, there's something that you can play around with, experiment with. There's nothing that you need to ingest. There's nothing that's going to hurt you. So I always try and give an idea of, think about it of going in a lab, right? You're going to test some things, see if they react, see if they, create the outcome that you want, but know that not all of them are going to be your favorite. And the ones that are your favorite, then you use those in your toolkit, which is why I wanted to create these card decks, so you could literally go through them and be like, ooh, I really like this one, or this one wasn't my favorite. toss that one, and build your own unique set of tools that can be literally in your back pocket that you can practice with in low kind of risk environment that you know that you're going to love when things are more high risk.
Awesome. Okay, wonderful. I'd love to ask a couple questions just on practical applications, and
Mhm.
some of these may resonate with folks here, or other ones might. So we just kind of have a varied um, array of different ones. So I just want to start off with is this is a kind of a global question: is just how does fictional fear or chronic stress, how does that affect our health and our potential decision making? Just so we're kind of more
Yeah,
aware of
so
what's going on.
yeah, we'll start with the decision making, because stress is going to be all of the physical maladies that hypertension, stroke, heart attack, cancer. Cancer is just a disease of the cell cycle. When our cells can't properly reproduce, they go kind of the reproduction process goes wrong. That has been tied to stress, and so digestive issues, obviously, psychological issues, health and happiness, the way that you interact with your family, or the way that you parent, the way that you lead, all those things are tied to stress. And when we don't have a mechanism to get ourselves to be able to navigate through these storms, it trickles down, right? It seeps into every aspect of our life. And that's because we're human, right? It's how it is. And so, it's really like so many things. It's really all of it, especially when you're talking about your cardiovascular system. Also, stress can have a negative impact on your skeletal muscular system as well. That, like for me, again, shoulder scruncher, this creates a lot of tension. And for me personally, I have like scoliosis. And I know that if I don't manage my stress properly and I'm scrunching a bunch, I'm going to be in so much pain because it's going to fire up the scoliosis has nothing to do with the stress, but my habits around stress can increase the pain amount that is from that, right? And so it's just our when we look at our body and our mind, they're not separate, even though in the sciences we've tried to create verticals that separate them. It's all connected, right? In practice.
Yeah, that's
And for the you know, how we work and how we create, a lot of my work is also in helping companies with their innovation. And initially people are like, wait a minute, wait, what does fear and courage have to do with innovation? Well, I'm glad you asked. So in our brain, a very, very simple version of the anatomy of the like fear courage system is the amygdala, which is going to be two almond shaped pair structures in the brain. And this is for simplistic form, let's say our fear center, right? So when the amygdala gets activated, we're in a mild to extreme fear arousal response to something that is going on either in our thoughts or in our environment. Now, the prefrontal cortex, which is, if you gently slap your forehead, it's going to be right behind there. That is going to be the part of the brain that allows us to plan, to create, to innovate, all of the things that we associate with creating a successful trajectory. It's going to come from that prefrontal cortex. However, they work in tandem. So when the amygdala is fired up, when you are experiencing even a low level fear response, the prefrontal cortex, that center where you need to have all those great ideas and innovate and problem solve, it goes to sleep, goes offline, refuses to play your reindeer games until the amygdala has gotten its stuff together and becomes calm again. So if you want to come up with the best solutions, if you want to come up with new ideas, then you have to deal with your fear stuff. Like you physically can't create, innovate, or solve problems when your amygdala is fired up. And having these tools also not just in your back pocket, but making a part of corporate culture where you're practicing as a team not only takes away that stigma, takes away that shame, but makes the team stronger because now they can practice in community and have these tools during crunch, during times of high stress, and not feel like they're having to just endure by themselves, but they're enduring as a team.
got it. For those, parents and caregivers who are who are here today, what tips do you have in terms of helping children develop a healthy relationship since, showing them the card, they may, they don't have the patience to go through that. So what are some tips?
Yeah, and that's another great thing about having just the NeuroHack quick win cards because a child is not going to want to read the whole book, right? And it's the book is written for adults. I mean, there's nothing, scandalous in there, but it's written for an adult audience. And for the cards are made to have a teaching within just like 2 or 3 lines of text, right? So something like the near and the far, and you can even just like choose one every Monday to practice with. So the near and the far takes advantage of convergence and divergence of the eye. And again, this isn't going to hurt you, so you can teach your kids to do it. You use a pencil or a pen. I just use my finger because I always, walk around with my fingers. So we'll do it together. I'm going to take off my glasses because not that it doesn't work with glasses, but I think it works better without glasses. So you're just going to we'll use fingers. So put my index finger just straight up to the sky. And I'm going to slowly bring it towards my nose. And then as it gets to my nose, now it's not in focus, but I'm still going to try and focus on it and continue, try and focus on it. It still looks like a fuzzy 2 finger. And the further I pull it out, then it's finally back to 1 finger. And then I'm gonna bring the finger back again, like just slowly hyper focusing both of my eyes on my finger. And oh, it's going blurry. And that's okay. It goes to my nose, still blurry. And you're just gonna keep doing that until you feel better. So what you're doing is also tapping into the vagus nerve, helping to bring a sense of calm to your amygdala. And this is something that, kids can do when they're feeling, afraid, when they're feeling stressed out, and having both the tools to teach them, but also as like a conversation starter, right? I think it would be, I'm not a parent myself. I'm a dog mom, but if I could share something like that with kids, I would say it would be a really exciting opportunity to also have conversations like the conversations I never had as a kid of a parent saying like, yeah, I'm really afraid of this thing too. Like how are you feeling about it? Or even if it's something like weather, right? Like, oh man, like I remember when I was your age, I was really afraid of lightning. But then, I found out how cool it is. Maybe I would explain the science. Not everyone would go there, but just kind of those stories that you can build into it, and then use that opportunity to like practice do these really simple neuro hacks. And then that's going to help that child feel empowered and that they aren't just at the whims of their feelings, that they can do something to change it in the moment.
I love that. I'm so going to tell my 9-year-old to do that when he gets home today. I'll be like,
I love it.
this is
Yes.
super cool, dude. You should just do this.
Yeah.
That's what he says. I will text you and let you know how it goes.
Okay, I can't wait.
Next question. So you talked a little bit at the beginning how we all have different tells.
Mhm.
How can we, with our partners, adult partners, support each other when our fear responses are different?
Such a good question. And there's many answers. Wow. Excuse me. Sorry. Like my voice is like, oh no, you're done talking for this week. Sorry.
No, we need you for a little longer. Go, go.
Come on, little voice, you can do it. Um, so again, many of these are going to be kind of gross generalizations that are going to be able to be applied to many, but not all. But when I talk about kind of our reactions to fear, especially if we're not noticing that it's a fear response, we're just kind of going on autopilot. Some people are porcupines and some people are turtles. Right. So a turtle reaction would be, okay, I'm literally going to get in my shell. I'm going to hide
That's
under the
me.
bed.
I'm a
Right. You're
turtle.
like, right. So like when you have that, kind of fear arousal response, that can look like shutting down. Right. That can look like just checking out. You're still at the meeting, but like people are talking. You're like, nope, can't wait to get out of here. And you go in on yourself, where porcupines are people that get really big and loud. Right? We've seen those people in the workplace that when they feel threatened, just start to yell, maybe like bang their fist on the the desk and like just get like explode like porcupines. And many times those reactions are because the person hasn't really started to dive into why that's their go-to. right? And neither of them is going to help them, right? Like retreating into yourself and checking out and not participating isn't going to help you and like allow you to get to the places in your life and your goals that you want to. And exploding at people is not going to help anyone get to the place that they want to go to. And and really, if you are with a romantic partner that has a little bit of a different style, is first thing just like recognizing that they exist and kind of having a conversation if there is any stories that are fueling that, right? Maybe it's because one person, like my mom was a porcupine. She was notorious for, like, one time she broke her entire set of like wedding china on the like dining room table because her husband was late for dinner. So when she would get angry, when she like for that, if I had to guess, it was a fear that he was out, doing cat in the ground, and because he didn't come home on time. And her reaction was to have like explosive type of I'm going to break stuff.
Right.
Doesn't help anyone. But as children watching that in the home, it would be easy to say, okay, I bet that here's a story from my childhood or my life where I learned that that was an acceptable way to behave when I was afraid. Not always, easy to dive into those things, but even just having an opportunity to be like, hey, like I see you turtling. I know you love to turtle, but like, do you want to talk about it? You don't have to, but kind of making that an invitation for diving deeper, or coming back to it, right? Like, because if you're in turtle mode, or even like if you're in porcupine mode, sometimes you don't have the ability to talk about it right then, right? But even just noticing and trying to draw that out in obviously with people that you trust and people that will hold space for you and aren't there to like do anything nefarious to you.
Mm-hmm.
It can be really a powerful way to create that deeper connection in that relationship. And once you start to notice it in others, you can notice it in yourself. And just again, like the process is the point. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's always going to be messy. But even just recognizing when you feel like you're turtling, right? Or when you feel the desire to, quill out as a porcupine, that in and of itself is powerful because you're not just letting your emotions kind of, get away from you and not, not really being present with those emotions. Once you start to recognize these things in yourself and other people, that's when really like, huge change can happen.
Got it. Now I'm going to imagine at the dinner table, like which kid is a porcupine and which
Yeah,
one's
yeah.
as we're talking. But it's great visuals because it is exactly as you said. It's like puff out and it's like,
Mhm.
they're even like throwing their quills out because they can shoot
Yes.
them. Yes, I have full visual there. One more practical application question for you. So you've said that successful leaders embrace fear instead of avoiding it. How can we as professionals reframe fear in order to boost our courage and innovation, which you had also mentioned earlier as well?
Yeah, I mean, when like modern leaders that want to lead by example and as well as like being an authentic leader, I think one of the most powerful things that you can do is not pretend that you're feeling something that you aren't. Because there's a thing called mirror neurons. So in humans, mirror neurons help us to understand without language what's happening in another person of our species, right? So if a person is nervous, right? One of the examples I love to use is we've all been in a presentation where someone is doing the keynote or maybe it's just a smaller presentation and they are terrified and you can feel it. Like you can feel their fear in your own body and you're just sitting down not doing anything and you want to root for them usually, right? Because you're like you can do it, buddy, come on. But you can just, it's palatable, and that is the power of mirror neurons. And when a leader, let's say they're undergoing, like many companies are right now, downsizing or reskilling, or let's talk about AI. And if, as a leader, you go up and just bluster or pretend like everything's fine or, just essentially fake it until you make it, you're not fooling anybody. Like everyone in that room, especially if you are having big emotions yourself, is going to know, and they're not going to trust you. They may not know why they don't trust you, but those mirror neurons are telling them not to trust you because the things coming out of your mouth are not the things you're actually feeling. Now, on that other hand, you don't want to use your team as like free therapy, right? So there's a balance to it. But having a continued kind of culture of talking about these things. Like I have companies that will use the neurohack cards where Monday stand up, everyone will just do like one card, right? And as it opens that conversation, even it takes like 2 minutes, but it creates a culture where it is acceptable to talk about fear. It's acceptable to talk about doing hard things.
Yeah.
Another way a leader can do that is talking about the thing that everyone else is afraid of. Let's say it's, downsizing or layoffs as we make our way to the end of the year. And instead of just pretending like it doesn't exist until they get a surprise email.
Yeah, I know people
Right?
that happened to. Exactly.
Right. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. Not fine. So, because they're having conversations with their executive leadership, they know before the rest of the, company does, but really being honest about how they're feeling and saying like, hey, we don't have any details yet, but I just want to share with you that I understand that, this is a really tough time for our company. And we are asking a lot from you. And I'm afraid too. I'm afraid that we, are not going to do our best to navigate AI, or we're not going to do our best to make, Q4 KPIs and bringing up these words of saying, I'm afraid too. And it's okay to be afraid, but we're going to go together on this. We are going to walk this pathway together in honesty, in authenticity. And I'm going to do my best not to BS you. And you're going to do your best to continue showing up. And that type of communication from senior leadership will build immediate trust and kind of increase the ability for people to feel like they have an ally instead of an adversary.
That's super helpful. All of those applications were all very helpful, Mary. Um, so you mentioned AI, and I want to ask the next question, kind of not about AI specifically, but just about the world around us and social media specifically, because we feel like yes, we're living in a world of it's like what headline did I wake up to read this morning, and inundated with social media and figuring out how to manage that. What's your advice for how people can protect their stress energy?
Yeah, it's not participating as much as we have become accustomed to participating. With social media and things like that, which can be really hard, especially if your job is in social media.
Right.
But deciding on what boundaries look like for you around that, and then actually sticking to them. And when we think about the human brain, our brains were never designed to take in as much information and as much tragedy and as like much everything as we are being inundated with right now. It's just too much. Like no human brain was made to deal with this level of stuff. And, you know, for me, I personally will just have the news sources that I trust. You know, I follow like, the BBC, and I will have a little bit of news in my day, but I don't want to completely like just constantly be a part of the news cycle. Again, it depends on your job. If you're in news, you can't get away from it. But for my own sanity, like I know that I can't help other people if I'm so personally overwhelmed with all the things that are happening in the world. I just can't. So I have to choose what's more important for me. Doing something like this where I'm able to have long form conversation and have the chance to change the world in a smaller way? Or is it more important for me to overconsume social media, be so overwhelmed and exhausted by it that I just want to lay in my bed and listen to a YA novel and then nothing happens, right? So it's choices, and it can be it can be hard, especially if you happen to miss the meme of the moment. You know, when people are like, "Oh, did you hear about the Coldplay couple?" And then you're like, "What is that? I don't know."
That
So
one
you
came
may
on my
miss,
phone. Yes, I
right?
saw
I
that.
know. So you might miss out on a couple of like water cooler, meme worthy experiences, but you'll be okay. And if it's that funny, you can just go look it up when other people are telling you. But I think it's being really firm about what you can give to these different things in life and what you are getting from those different things in life. And if you're just getting bad sleep and higher stress from consuming social media, then, like step back and see what happens. Or being really strategic about how you curate your social like channels. For me, um, on Instagram, it's basically all dog videos because that's all I refuse to, I don't want any other content but cute animal videos, mostly dog videos. But like that's relaxing to me, right? So if I know that it's highly curated, so if I go on my Instagram, I'm seeing puppies, play the little things that make them talk, say like more treats, or I'm seeing, like that's all I want my social media to be. And you could say that's a bit Pollyanna, but I feel that I work enough in the space of global change, and it's okay for me to not have to be on the 24-hour news cycle. Like that's just
Yeah.
fine. All puppies all the time. That's that's what I want.
Oh. Okay, so we have about 5 minutes left, and I'm going to go here to the chat real quick, and I want to grab some questions. Okay, so we've got one. This is from Nancy, and also if any of you want to hit the raise your hand function, you can do that now, and I'll keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, I'm going to start to go through the chat and ask some questions. So this one says 3 questions. What is your advice to parents in raising courageous daughters? At the end of the day, what is your process for winding down and falling asleep?
Well, I'm going to start with the second question because I don't have a good answer because I've been an insomniac since I was like 17. So I don't know how many books I've bought about sleep. And although I will say there's two things that I found value in, binaural beats, and there's different like things that you can get. You can get them on all music channels. So I always spell this wrong too. It's like Binaural, and I feel like I'm in a spelling bee. I'm sure I like messed that up, but essentially it's tones, and sometimes you can have like, oh, I want the binaural beats with rain. That's kind of one of my go-tos. Or you can get, there's a bunch of courses called the Great Courses that you can get on Audible, as well as you can get textbooks that are read on like an audiobook. And we've all fallen asleep in a GE course in our undergrad days. So think about what class that you fell asleep in all the time. Was it art history? Was it biology? I mean, I'm a biologist, I get it. And find a textbook for that class and just let the textbook run while you're sleeping, because that's such a great way, because you're not interested in the content enough to keep yourself awake, and you do have some muscle memory of things that put you to sleep when you were younger. And so let's say, no offense to art history, we'll say art history was the class that you fell asleep in. Just get a textbook on Audible.
Oh, we lost your audio, or I lost your audio.
Me too.
Oh, okay, not just me.
Oh, I can hear her.
No, no, we
Is
had
that
this.
better?
Yeah, yeah, you're back.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, great. So yeah, so just getting a textbook and listening to a really boring textbook being read to you can help. And then going back to the first question, since I'm not a parent, I always kind of shy away from how to parent kids because I feel that parenting is such a hard job and there's so many nuances. But if I could use myself as an example of what I would have wanted, as a teenage girl, would be to just have these like open conversations about making it acceptable to be afraid. That again, because in my house it wasn't. You were smiley, happy, joyful, that's fine. Any other emotions, absolutely not fine. So if you felt them, just shove it down and smile. So, having a space where it would be okay to experience the entire, rainbow of emotions, I think would have been really powerful. And
and ways that I could move through those sensations that we practice together. Right. Like the neuro hacks or like the rain method, to have something concrete where when I would go out in the world, I felt that even if my parents weren't with me, I had these tools that allowed me to feel like I could deal with whatever came my way.
Oops. Okay, that's super helpful. There was one other follow-on question to the getting to sleep. So this one was
Mhm.
not when we are going to prepare to go to sleep. This is what do you do when you wake up? I said earlier, where I don't want to even look at the clock. I know I'm
Yeah.
awake, but it makes me more stressed to know that it's 2:30 or 3 because then I feel
Mhm.
worse about being awake. What
Yeah.
can we do, or do we put back on the audiobook? What are some thoughts that you have on how best to deal with that?
Yeah. So when you kind of have like an early morning wake up, generally there's a correlation to cortisol, but I'm not going to get too much into that. But in terms of what to do about it, um, like one of my favorite things is to do like the pinch the valley, right? You don't have to turn on any lights because you once you turn on a light, let's say to go back to your audiobook, now you have to get on your phone, and now that's a whole other thing because not just the lights, but maybe people texted while you're sleeping, and now you're that's just not going to be good. So helping to bring calm to your body with something that you don't have to turn on lights as kind of like a first level. So something like just pinch the valley, and if you share your bed with a partner or kids or dogs, no one's the wiser because you're just grabbing your hand and rubbing the valley in between. Um, so kind of having these ones that work for you during the day to be able to use them at night. For me, I know that if I'm starting to kind of like have a racing thought process at that 3 a.m. wake up, for me, I need to get up and move around. So like I physically need to get out of bed, like walk around the house like a wraith in the quiet for not trying not to wake people up. And you always know where the like squeaky boards are. You try to miss those ones.
Right? Yeah.
Or if you're a parent, maybe like quietly check on the kids. And then having that reset of just physically moving your body and then coming back to bed can be really helpful because you're creating this kind of division of, all right, I'm starting to have monkey mind and it's starting to just spool out. All right, no, I'm going to get up, just moving my body, and then I'm going to come back and return and see if that can to help like create that reset.
Wonderful. Well, I know we're at our time and I want to be respectful. This was so amazing, and I hope everyone had some wonderful takeaways. I know I did, and definitely if you haven't, go to hellobravenewyou.com. You can see Mary's book behind her on the shelf, so that's what it looks like when you order it on Amazon. Thank you so much for returning to Collaborative Women and doing this event with us. I see a lot of notes in the chat
Yeah.
saying
Oh, and
thank
if you
you.
also they're also the cards. You can get the like physical versions of the cards through Etsy, and you can link to it at the hellobraveneyou.com if you want, especially with families. The physical cards come in a pack of 25, and then of course the book is at all major retailers and stores.
Amazing. Is there anything else that you want to share with the audience before I announce our
Yeah,
next
no,
event?
just this was fantastic. So thank you so much. I just saw that in the chat. Just want to make sure that people knew how to get those, and I hope that everyone gets to face the rest of today a little bit braver.
I know we will. And we're in it together as one community. So I
Yes.
appreciate it. And I will see you tomorrow, Mary, at 8.
Yes. Love it.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. And we do have two more events that are coming up. One for next quarter, Q4, which is going to be on the topic of AI, which I'm sure that there has been a lot of content on. So we will be touching on that. And then for Q1, we will have another live Q&A with an author, Dan Arelli. So please keep an eye out for that on our website. And the registration links will be out soon.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Ria.
Thank you, Fabiola.
Thank
Bye.
you.